The first thing you need to understand about Ambassador Vorn Cathalis, third-ranking diplomat of the Galactic Cooperative of 17 sentient species, is that he considered himself a well-traveled male. He had visited the sulfur plains of Drekka Prime. He had taken a tour of the acid rain forests of Mool. He had once, on a dare, eaten a fermented egg of the blob species which, for context, smelled like something between rotting fish and burning plastic, and he had survived all of it. Vorn believed, with the confident stupidity of a creature who had never truly been tested, that nothing in this galaxy could genuinely surprise him anymore. He was, as the humans would later teach him, catastrophically wrong. It started on the Cooperative's flagship research station, Orbit Point 11, rotating slowly above the third planet of a perfectly boring yellow star. The planet below them was blue and white, patched with brown and green, and absolutely unremarkable from orbit, except that it was, according to the new data files sitting on Vorn's desk, a Class 7 extreme hostility world. Vorn stared at the classification. He stared at the planet. He looked back at the classification. The planet still looked boring. Sola, he said, turning to his junior analyst, a four-eyed friendish named Sola Vex. Run the scan again. Sola ran the scan again. The result was the same. Class 7, extreme hostility. There must be a calibration error, Vorn said. Sola said nothing. She was already pulling up the detailed breakdown, and her four eyes were widening at different speeds, which, for a friendish, was the physiological equivalent of screaming. Vorn leaned over her shoulder and read the breakdown. Surface gravity, 1.0 standard. Fine. Normal. Boring. Atmospheric composition, nitrogen, oxygen, trace gases, also fine. Temperature range, minus 89 degrees Celsius at recorded low, plus 56 at recorded high. Vorn's left eye twitched. That was already 145 degrees of variation on a single planet, but okay, he had seen worse. Then he kept reading. Active tectonic plates. Yes. Ongoing, catastrophic. Active volcanism. Yes. Ongoing, catastrophic. Extreme weather events. Yes. Ongoing, catastrophic. Native apex predators. Yes. Multiple, with bite forces exceeding 1,700 pounds per square inch. Venomous species count, 432 confirmed, likely more. Toxic plant species, over 300 confirmed, several indistinguishable from edible species without laboratory analysis. Parasitic organisms capable of surviving inside sentient hosts, over 100 documented. Microscopic pathogens capable of killing sentient beings, in the thousands, possibly the tens of thousands. Average surface oxygen level at altitude, insufficient for most known species. Spontaneous electrical discharges from sky. Yes, frequent, reaching temperatures of 30,000 Kelvin, which for comparison was 5 times hotter than the surface of the planet's own sun. Vorn slowly sat down in his chair. He sat there for a very long time. Sola, he finally said in a voice that was doing its absolute best to remain professional. Who lives here? Sola pulled up the next file. Humans, she said. Vorn stared at the word. How many humans? 8 billion. The chair creaked under Vorn because he had involuntarily gripped both armrests hard enough to leave indentations. 8 billion. 8 billion creatures, voluntarily inhabiting a world that, by every scientific metric, should have killed every single one of them before they ever figured out how to make fire. Pull up everything we have on their civilization, he said. Sola pulled it up. What followed was the longest 40 minutes of Vorn's professional career. He learned that humans had not simply survived their world. They had conquered it. They had built cities in regions where temperature alone should have been fatal. They had carved roads through mountain ranges. They had settled coastlines where the ocean regularly produced waves taller than buildings. And when those waves came, they rebuilt. They always rebuilt. They had domesticated animals that could have killed them easily, and then, because apparently domestication was not enough, they had started riding those animals, or sport, because the animals sometimes tried to throw them off violently, and the humans considered this entertainment. One document referenced a human practice called running with bulls, and Vorn had to read that section 3 times before his translation module confirmed that yes, this was exactly what it sounded like. Humans released large horned animals into narrow streets and then ran in front of them, and the ones who survived considered it a cultural celebration. Another section detailed a practice called base jumping, in which humans leapt off very tall structures and buildings wearing only fabric wings, and attempted to land without dying. Another detailed something called free solo climbing, in which humans climbed vertical rock faces hundreds of meters tall using only their bare hands and feet. No ropes, no safety equipment, just them and the rock, and a fall that would end their existence And they did it because, according to the interviewed humans, it felt, quote, peaceful. Vorn rubbed his head, which on Cathalians manifested as all four of his cranial lobes pressing together slowly, something his species only did when experiencing severe cognitive strain. Is there a pathology section, he asked. Some kind of neural dysfunction that explains the risk-seeking behavior. Sola pulled up the pathology section. The humans did not have a neural dysfunction. They had, according to cooperative xenobiologists, a neurochemical reward system that specifically released pleasure chemicals in response to surviving danger. The more dangerous the situation, the more rewarding the survival. Their bodies had evolved, on purpose, to find death-defying scenarios enjoyable. Vorn made a sound that his species did not have a formal word for. It was the sound of a brain trying to quietly resign. Schedule a meeting with the human diplomatic team, he said. I need to talk to one of them directly. The meeting was scheduled for the following morning. The human diplomat who arrived was named Breck Okafor. He was medium height by human standards, which still made him taller than Vorn by about 30 centimeters, broad across the shoulders, and he walked into the conference room with the casual, unhurried stride of a creature that had never once in its life considered that the ground beneath its feet might kill it, which Vorn was now realizing was because the ground on his home planet had also tried to kill him, and he had simply gotten used to it. Breck shook Vorn's hand, which involved gripping Vorn's upper limb firmly and moving it up and down, a greeting that in several cooperative species would have constituted a threat display, but which the humans had apparently decided meant friendship. Ambassador Vorn, Breck said warmly, sitting across the table and setting down a small container that Vorn would later discover contained something humans called coffee, which was a boiling hot liquid extracted from roasted beans, consumed primarily to chemically force the human nervous system to remain awake past its natural limits. Even their beverages were aggressive. Ambassador Okafor, Vorn said carefully, I have been reviewing the survey data on your home planet. Breck smiled. Good. We've been hoping the cooperative would get up to speed on that. I have questions, Vorn said. Fire away, Breck said. This was, Vorn's translator informed him, a human idiom meaning please proceed. It was also, coincidentally, a phrase that referenced the discharge of a weapon. Humans, Vorn was beginning to notice, had a statistically unusual number of idioms that casually referenced violence. The tectonic activity on your surface, Vorn began. The earthquakes, Breck said, nodding pleasantly. Yes. There are regions of your planet where large-scale seismic events occur regularly, sometimes destroying entire sections of cities. Yep, Breck agreed. And humans continue to live in those regions. Absolutely. Vorn waited for Breck to explain this decision. Breck simply looked at him with a pleasant expression, as if this were a perfectly reasonable thing to say and required no further elaboration. Why? Vorn said. Breck tilted his head slightly. I mean, the views are usually great, the land is fertile because of the volcanic soil, property is cheaper. He paused. Also, I think honestly most people just kind of figure it probably won't happen while they're there. And when it does happen while they are there, Breck shrugged one shoulder. Then you rebuild. There it was, that word again. Rebuild. Vorn filed it carefully into the part of his brain that was now dedicated entirely to humans, a part that had not existed 3 days ago and was currently expanding at an alarming rate. The electrical discharge phenomenon, Vorn continued. The bolts of ionized plasma that strike from your sky. Lightning, Breck said. Yes. Our data shows they reach 30,000 Kelvin. Give or take, yeah. Your sun's surface is 6,000 Kelvin. Breck blinked. Huh. I actually didn't know the exact number, that's wild. He said wild with the tone of a creature who had just learned an interesting piece of trivia, not with the tone of a creature who had just been told that their sky regularly produced heat 5 times hotter than their own star. Humans build tall structures, Vorn said, voice perfectly steady, that specifically attract this phenomenon. Breck pointed a finger at him. Lightning rods, yeah. You put a metal rod on top of a building, it gives the lightning a path to the ground that isn't, through the building itself. So you have designed technology to deliberately draw 30,000 Kelvin plasma strikes toward your structures. To protect the structures, yes. By making them a preferred target. Breck opened his mouth, closed it, tilted his head in the other direction. I mean, when you say it like that, Vorn folded all 4 of his secondary hands together. Ambassador Okafor, I am trying very hard to approach your species with diplomatic openness and without prejudice. I want you to understand that what I am about to say comes from a place of professional respect. Breck nodded seriously. Your planet is trying to kill you, Vorn said. Constantly. From every direction simultaneously. The ground moves to destroy your structures. The sky fires superheated plasma at you. Your oceans generate walls of water taller than buildings. Your atmosphere at elevation is insufficient for survival. You have thousands of microscopic organisms specifically adapted to invade and destroy your biology. You have hundreds of venomous animals. You have plant life that is toxic and camouflaged to look edible. Your own weather systems regularly produce rotating columns of air moving at 300 kilometers per hour that erase entire towns. He paused for breath. And 8 billion of you have decided to live there anyway. The room was very quiet. Breck looked at Vorn for a long moment. Then he smiled. It was a warm smile. It was the smile of a creature who had genuinely never, not even once in its entire life, considered that this was strange. Ambassador Vorn, Breck said pleasantly. Where else would we live? Vorn had no answer for this. He genuinely, completely had no answer for this. Outside the viewport, Earth rotated below them, blue and quiet and beautiful and absolutely lethal, and 8 billion humans went about their day on its surface like it was the most normal thing in the universe, which Vorn was beginning to understand was the most terrifying part of all of it. Not that Earth was dangerous, but that the humans had lived there so long they had completely forgotten it was. There is a particular kind of dread that builds slowly. It is not the sharp electric panic of sudden danger. It is something quieter, something that settles into your bones over hours. The way cold water fills a sinking ship, methodically, patiently, with complete indifference to your feelings about the situation. Vorn Cathalis had been experiencing that specific variety of dread ever since Ambassador Breck Okafor had, with a smile that belonged on a creature with far less capacity for casual destruction, extended a formal invitation to visit Earth's surface. It will be good for relations, Breck had said. It will be good for relations. Vorn had repeated back to him, in the flat, hollow tone of a diplomat whose brain was working very hard to find a professional way to say absolutely not. He had not found one, which was how, exactly 11 days later, Vorn found himself sealed inside a reinforced atmospheric entry shuttle, wearing a biosafety suit that his medical team had spent a week designing, watching the blue and white surface of Earth grow larger in the viewport with the steady, unstoppable certainty of a deadline he had entirely failed to reschedule. His assistant Sola Vex was sitting beside him. She had all 4 eyes closed. This was either meditation or denial. Vorn suspected denial. His security attaché, a large and normally unflappable Drathari named Goss Moon, was seated directly behind them. Goss had faced down armed conflicts on 3 separate planets. He was currently reviewing the Earth Wildlife Database on his datapad, and he had not spoken in 40 minutes, which for Goss was the behavioral equivalent of screaming into a pillow. Breck Okafor sat across the aisle from all of them, looking out his own viewport with the relaxed expression of someone returning home after a long trip, which technically was exactly what he was doing. The shuttle broke through the cloud layer. Green. Vorn's first impression of Earth's surface was an almost offensive amount of green. Forests, he knew from the data files, but the data files had not conveyed the sheer density of it. The way it pressed against everything, the way it filled every space that water and rock had not already claimed. It looked, Vorn thought, like a planet that had tried to grow itself a second surface on top of the first one. Beautiful, right? Breck said, not looking away from the viewport. Vorn said nothing. He was watching a large dark cloud system moving across the horizon that his atmospheric sensors were flagging as a developing severe weather event. He was doing very careful breathing exercises. They landed at a human transport hub called an airport, outside a city called Lagos, in a region of the planet where the temperature was currently 34 degrees Celsius with, according to his suit's environmental sensors, 87% humidity. The shuttle door opened. The air hit Vorn like a warm, wet wall. It was not unbreathable. His suit filtered it, but through the suit he could feel the weight of it, the density, the way it pressed against him with a kind of biological enthusiasm that no atmosphere on any of the 17 cooperative worlds had ever displayed. Little warm, Breck said pleasantly, loosening the collar of his shirt. You get used to it. Vorn turned slowly to look at him. Breck was already walking down the landing steps like a creature who had never once had a single concern in its entire evolutionary history. The city was loud. That was the second thing Vorn registered after the heat. Lagos was a city of over 20 million humans, and 20 million humans, it turned out, generated a volume of combined noise that Vorn's species had no precedent for. Vehicles, voices, machines, music, construction, engines, all of it layered on top of each other into a wall of sound that his translator worked furiously to categorize and failed completely. Breck had arranged a vehicle and a guide. The guide's name was Adayas Nosu, a compact human woman with close-cropped hair and the efficient, no-nonsense energy of someone who had spent considerable time explaining things to beings who were experiencing their first existential crisis. She took one look at Vorn's rigid posture and carefully neutral expression and said, "First time on Earth." "Yes," Vorn said. "You read the briefing files," she said. "Thoroughly," Vorn said. Adayas nodded with the specific sympathy of someone who had seen this before. "The files make it worse, actually. Seeing everything listed out like that. In real life, you just live in it." "That is not the reassurance you may think it is," Vorn said. She smiled anyway and opened the vehicle door. The drive-through Logos was an education in human spatial reasoning and risk assessment, both of which Vorn quickly concluded operated on principles entirely unlike anything he had encountered before. Human vehicles moved in dense formations at speeds that left almost no margin for error, guided by a combination of traffic signals, lane markings, informal agreements between drivers, and what appeared to be a shared cultural understanding that everyone would probably be fine. At one intersection, their vehicle missed another vehicle by what Vorn's sensors measured as 43 centimeters. "Normal," Adayas said without looking up from her communication device. 43 centimeters, Vorn said. "Rush hour," she said. "Yesterday was worse." Goss Mune behind Vorn made a very quiet sound that no one acknowledged. The first official stop was a nature preserve on the outskirts of the city. Breck had insisted. "You need to see the actual planet," he had said, "not just the parts we built on top of it." The preserve was dense forest, the same aggressive green Vorn had seen from the shuttle. But from the ground it was something else entirely. The trees were enormous, easily 40 meters tall, and beneath them the air was cooler, filtered through layers of leaves, carrying the smell of soil and moisture and something Vorn could not name but that his suit's sensors logged as complex organic compound mixture, non-toxic, possibly pheromonal. It was objectively beautiful. It was also, according to the data quietly scrolling across Vorn's suit display, home to 3 species of venomous snake, 2 species of venomous spider, 1 species of large predatory cat, several species of stinging insects capable of anaphylactic reaction in sensitive organisms, and a category of microscopic soil organisms that the display delicately described as opportunistic pathogens. Recommend avoiding open wounds. Adayas walked the trail in light shoes and short sleeves. Vorn walked behind her in a sealed biosafety suit, moving with the careful deliberation of a being who had read every single data file and was thinking about every single one of them simultaneously. "Relax your shoulders," Adayas said without turning around. "I am not relaxing my shoulders," Vorn said. "You will hurt your back," she said. "I will take that risk," he said. They reached a clearing and Adayas stopped, pointing upward. In the canopy above, something large moved. Vorn's hand was already reaching for his emergency communicator before he registered that the thing in the canopy was not a predator. It was a primate. A large, dark, slow-moving creature with an expression of profound disinterest in their presence. "Chimpanzee," Adayas said. Vorn stared up at it. The chimpanzee stared back at him, appeared to make a judgment about his worth as a subject of attention, and then slowly looked away. "It shares approximately 98.7% of your genetic material," Vorn said, pulling the data from memory. "Give or take," Adayas agreed. "It is not domesticated. Definitely not. It is free roaming in a shared space with human visitors. It was here first," Adayas said simply. Vorn watched the chimpanzee move through the canopy. It was enormously strong, he knew, capable of bending steel. Fast, agile, with large canine teeth designed for combat, and arms that could generate more force than most cooperative species could produce with their entire bodies. And it was, by Earth standards, a medium-sized animal. Not even apex, just medium. Vorn very quietly filed this under the growing archive in his brain labeled Reasons. The afternoon brought the coast. Breck had specifically requested the coast, and Vorn had initially not understood why. But as they crested the final rise of the road and the Atlantic Ocean came into view, he understood that Breck had simply wanted to show him something overwhelming. The ocean was not like the bodies of liquid on other worlds. Those were contained, bounded, comprehensible. This was a planetary-scale system of moving water that stretched to the horizon in every direction Vorn could look, and even from 100 meters away he could feel, through his suit, through his body, through the soles of his feet on the rock, the sound of it. A low, rhythmic, deeply structural sound like the planet itself was breathing. "That is a lot of water," Solovex said, speaking for the first time in several hours. 71% of the surface, Breck said. "Average depth of 3,700 meters. The deepest point is about 11,000 meters. We have explored less of our own ocean floor than we have of the surface of our moon. Vorn turned to look at him. You have an unexplored interior ocean, mostly unexplored. Breck agreed. With unknown organisms, almost certainly, yeah. On the planet where you live. Breck picked up a flat stone from the ground and skipped it across the surface of the water, and it bounced 4 times before sinking. He looked pleased with this. Vorn genuinely did not know what to do with him. That evening, Breck took them to a human gathering space called a restaurant in the center of the city, and Vorn sat across from him and a daisy and watched humans eat, drink, and make noise at each other, while the warm night air of the city came in through open windows that had no filters whatsoever. I need to ask you something, Vorn said. Go ahead, Breck said, around a mouthful of food. Your species has survived this planet for over 200,000 years, Vorn said. You have been struck by lightning, eaten by predators, poisoned, drowned, buried by earthquakes, burned by volcanoes, frozen, infected, and systematically dismantled by nearly every force your planet can produce. He paused. You now have space travel. You could leave. Breck put down his fork. You could settle other worlds, Vorn continued. Quieter worlds, safer worlds, worlds without 300 venomous species and a sky that tries to incinerate you. The cooperative has several Class 2 habitability worlds currently unoccupied. I could personally arrange. He stopped. Why are you still here? Breck was quiet for a moment. Then he said, because it is ours? Vorn waited. Every scar on it, Breck said. Every city we built in a flood zone. Every town we rebuilt after the fire. Every coast we went back to after the wave. It is not ours because it is easy. It is ours because we fought for it every single day for 200,000 years, and it fought back, and neither of us won, and we are still here. He picked up his fork again. You do not leave a place like that. You do not leave something you have that kind of history with. The restaurant was warm and loud around them, and outside the open windows the city moved and breathed and hummed with the energy of 20 million creatures who had been born on a death world and considered it home. Vorn sat with that for a long time. Goss Mune, beside him, said quietly, I think I understand them now. Do you? Vorn said. They did not survive the planet, Goss said. They became it. Vorn looked out the open window at the city, at the sky above it thick with stars, at the dark smudge of the ocean just visible at the end of the wide road below. He thought about the chimpanzee in the canopy looking at him with complete indifference. He thought about the lightning rods on top of every tall building politely inviting the sky's fury downward. He thought about the coast road and the sound of the ocean breathing and the unseen deep below it. He thought about 8 billion creatures who had looked at the most dangerous planet in the known galaxy and called it home, and meant it, every syllable of it, without irony, without hesitation, without even the smallest flicker of doubt. Tomorrow he would file his report. He would recommend full diplomatic relations. He would note, in carefully measured language, that humanity presented no hostile threat to the cooperative, and that their request for membership should be processed with appropriate speed. He would not write in the official report what he was thinking right now. He would not write that he had visited 17 worlds and seen wonders on most of them, and that none of them had made him feel what this broken, burning, soaking, shaking, lightning-struck world had made him feel standing on that coast road with the Atlantic breathing below him. He would not write that the most dangerous planet in the galaxy was, somehow, also the most alive. He would not write any of that, but sitting in the warm noise of the Lagos restaurant, watching Breck Okafor eat his dinner with the complete, unshakable peace of a creature exactly where it belonged, Vorn thought it very loudly. Earth was not a death world. No, Earth was something far more complicated than that. Earth was a love story, a 200,000-year argument between a species and a planet that was still going, and neither side had the slightest interest in stopping. And somewhere out there, in the dark between the stars, the rest of the galaxy was only just beginning to understand what that meant.